Hello, everybody, and welcome back to week number 3 of the NFL preseason. I'm going to be your host, Sean PSU fans to Newsham, and join me once again is the wonderful Chris Gimino. Chris, how's it going today?
I'm doing excellent, man. We got another great slate on tap. I had a pretty good night last night, not the best, but top 10 to finish in one of the GPPs, and now I'm looking to try to repeat it again. I've entered my lineups. I challenge each and every one of you to use the information that we're using and beat my ass in that tournament tonight. Let's go.
I mean, Chris, did you have a lot of Matt Bushman and his 40 points that he had yesterday?
No, that was hilarious. I was actually looking at the 0 snaps he played the previous week and wondering, is this going to be some sort of a situation? And sure enough, but that's how it goes at preseason. There's lots of volatility. That's why we love it.
Exactly. It's a situation where last week yesterday, I guess Bushman went wild. Wasn't even necessarily expecting to play. And actually, I think he got injured in the game too. I think he left early because he got banged up and didn't even finish the game. So very interesting spot. So we got a 4-game slate to run through for you guys today. We're going to go team by team, talk through each position and sort of what we're looking at with each position, what we think is going to happen, what could happen. And then we'll give you guys a brief wrap up at the end of the slate today. So first game is the Buffalo Bills and Carolina Panthers. We're going to start here with the Buffalo Bills. We see that the starters are unlikely to play. We're not expecting starters to play in this game. So quarterback is probably going to be Case Keenum and Matt Barkley in some sort of a split. We have other quarterback situations that are just a bit better tonight, so I don't really think you need to look at any quarterbacks here, but does anyone stand out to you that you might take a shot with on these two guys?
Yeah, I tried to galaxy brain this and invent a way to like Matt Barkley here, but I don't have any information that suggests which way the split of playing time will go just yet. If I get that, I'll be more interested. But Barkley's the guy that I would immediately assume, based on how much Keenum has played so far, basically half the snaps through preseason. If there was going to be a game where Barkley got most of the run, it would be this one. But again, I have nothing to go off there. Cannot make that assessment.
Definitely. All right, moving on to the running back position. I'll let you talk a little bit about Raheem Blackshear, who you were talking up to me a little bit before the show today.
Yeah, 5'9" undrafted player from Virginia Tech who's been absolutely dominant in the preseason when it comes to scoring fantasy points, 6 for 81. Receiving, looking a lot like he's going to be a focal point again today. Tywan Jones does not play offense. He is a special teams only player. Devin Singletary, unlikely to play a lot if he plays at all. Zach Moss and James Cook have their roster positions locked in. That leaves basically just Duke Johnson, a veteran who's been discarded from several teams at this point. The only player in his way for getting snaps and someone who's impressed as much as Blackshear figures to get the attention of the coaches, looking to put out a evaluation performance once again here in this game. Love them.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the top, like you said, we don't expect much of Singletary, Moss, and Cook, and Tywan Jones is not going to play. He's kind of an ace of the whole, special teams ace as we have marked here, and that pretty much leaves the snaps to go down to Duke Johnson and Blackshear. Duke Johnson's been around the league for a long time. He's not someone that you really need to see, whereas Blackshear is a young guy that wants to get some tape out there. So I think we have a good chance to see probably even a 50% type of snap count here for Blackshear, with that depending a little bit on Cook and Moss, depending if they play at all, could limit that a little bit. Moving on to receivers, again, we don't expect any of the starters to play. We have a few guys banged up and injured with McKenzie, Stevenson, and Kumaro. And then Jameson Crowder, I'm not sure how much he's going to play here. He did play a lot in week 2. But the people that I like, I know you like as well, Khalil Shakir and Isaiah Hodgins. I'll talk about Shakir. Shakir is a guy from Boise State who was heavily involved in their offense. He's a guy that they get the ball to, and I would expect nothing different here, which makes me really like someone like that, because anytime you have a guy that they design plays for and they design plays to get involvement, I like those type of players in the preseason. So what's your thoughts on Isaiah Hodgins here?
Yeah, so I mean, the guy's been completely involved every single game so far. I think he has like 15 targets or something in the preseason. Just he has a very high number of looks that he's been getting in this Bills offense as they look to evaluate the very last spots for their wide receiver. They might keep as many as 7. He's certainly in the mix for one of those, but certainly Buffalo is not wasting this opportunity in the preseason to evaluate exactly who they want in that spot. Now, Kumaro had general soreness on Wednesday. I do expect him to be available. I mean, there's no real news on that I've seen for sure as far as whether he is not there. But I mean, there's still only going to be like 5 guys here. So I would imagine that this is another opportunity for them to be looking at those spots. Kumaro, Hodgins, Shakir, and the not playing, but in that mix, Marquez Stevenson, is the other guy that they're trying to evaluate here as far as who goes where on the depth chart. And Hodgins is a volume play for me.
For sure. All right, moving into the tight end. I know you talked about trying to find the next Matt Bushman performance, and you wanted to really like OJ Howard, but you're concerned a little bit with Sweeney and Morris battling for roster position. So what's your thoughts with the tight ends here?
Yeah, same deal. I mean, really, it's more of like are they going to split the time evenly? I think OJ Howard's opportunity was last week. So there's no guarantee. Unlike the regular season, when you see a guy at 55% snaps or whatever, you try to translate that to the future and say this is something we can expect going forward in some cases. I don't know that we can do that with the preseason on a like-for-like basis, so I'm not so sure that we're going to see Howard being the heavily used tight end here in this game. I would not expect Gilliam to play. He's more of a starter, same with Knox. So it's really Sweeney and Morris would be the guys you're worried about taking the playing time there. So I don't love it, but I guess you could do it because he could be efficient.
Yeah, and I will say, I will give all these guys credit. All three of these guys do have the ability to catch some passes. So I think all three of which are open options in GPP formats because tight end is generally very difficult. You have a guy like Matt Bushman that goes out and catches 3 for 80 and 2 touchdowns. You're going to win GPPs if you have that guy. All three of these guys do have the ability to catch some balls.
There's only one guy in the site that's actually done that, though. We'll talk about him later.
Yeah, there you go. All right, moving over to the Carolina Panthers. We do expect Baker Mayfield to play 1 to 1.5 quarters here. We do not have anything on Sam Darnold, whether or not he will play. That part is unknown. And then PJ Walker will obviously come in and finish off the game. I'm not in love with the quarterback situation here. Again, I think we have other quarterback situations that are more clear-cut and more upside to them that I wouldn't really touch here. The running back situation is a bit tricky. You have Giovanni Ricci, who's more of a tight end. Then you obviously know Christian McCaffrey will not play. That leaves some banged up people. So why don't you talk a little bit about John Lovett and the possibility he could get some run here?
Sure. I'm not sure I can talk a lot about him because I barely know who he is, but I know he's the back-end running back on the Panthers roster. And this individual is going to have to play in this game unless they intend on running Hubbard and Foreman for longer than one would expect. You would expect 1 to 1.5 quarters max for each of those guys, and that's if they don't play at the same time. So Lovett is a player that it's hard to love because, there's a good chance he stinks. But at the same time, without Spencer Brown, who has been listed as week to week, we haven't actually seen a confirmation that he wasn't at practice the last couple of days. But we do know that he was labeled week to week prior to that, and there's no real likelihood of him being available tonight. So Lovett is a guy that could strictly be on the field for anywhere from a quarter to a half, and that's something that you have to at least consider.
Yeah, I think we're looking at with Lovett here. You're looking at probably a guy he's obviously not going to play when Mayfield's out there. Like when Mayfield's out there, you're going to see Hubbard and you're going to see Foreman. I think what's realistic here is we expect to see like Hubbard and Foreman absorb the first half, and then Lovett plays a majority of the second half. Maybe with Foreman giving him some breaks if he needs them. But yeah, I would definitely think John Lovett definitely has a shot to get some extended run here. Moving to the receiver position, we have a bit of guys that played quite a few snaps last week. Like you see Keith Kirkwood, Rashard Higgins, Rashawn Henry, Derek Wright, Shi Smith all played 40% or more of the snaps last week. We don't expect the starters to play. However, this is just a little bit too deep for me. We had Brandon Zylstra. He was returning from an injury last week. I think we probably will see him here. And as you see, Andre Roberts returned. So this could be a pretty deep receiving core tonight. Is there anyone that stands out to you here?
No, I mean, there's too many guys here that you can't rule out. So that makes it very difficult to love anybody. And I'm sure somebody like Shi Smith could get out there and continue to do what he's been doing all camp and, be efficient and look good doing it. But, they got CJ Saunders coming back. I imagine if he's available to play, they're going to want to see him for some snaps. But, nobody stands out off the team. Rashawn Henry had a lot of snaps in a couple of games. But this is a stay away situation for me.
Yeah, tight end for me is an interesting spot. Tommy Tremble isn't like an established veteran here, so I think there's a good chance Tommy Tremble plays a decent amount, and even with Baker Mayfield. So I think Tremble is warranting of some consideration. And then Stephen Sullivan, like these are back-end guys are not going to play. You could see a significant amount of snaps for Stephen Sullivan. Do you like either of these two guys at tight end?
It's difficult for me to fall in love with the players who don't. I mean, there's nothing that jumps off the page that even if they are going to be on the field that they're going to be pass catchers. And plus you have to factor in Ricci plays tight end too. So to me, I'm not really that fascinated with the Carolina tight end situation. Albeit Tremble would be a guy, if I knew he was going to play a lot, I would at least consider, but I don't factually know that.
For sure. All right, moving on to the next game. We have Seattle at Dallas. So starting off here with the Seahawks, I know that we've talked about a little bit before we came on here about Drew Lock and his expected playing time. What do you think the realistic expectation is here from Lock in terms of snaps?
Oh, he's going to play 3 quarters. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that Gino's going to be out there for like maybe 3 series seems like a lot for Gino to play, given how much he's already played. I think that the writing is on the wall. This is an evaluation / chance for Drew Lock to get out there and do some things on tape and see if he can really prove himself as someone who's deserving of overtaking Gino for the starting spot. I can't promise that that's actually how they'll view it. Like, it may just be Gino's job already, but they haven't announced it. To me, I think Lock is a fantastic play. There's no question in my mind he's going to go out there and play. Like, there's playing time on the line, whether or not that's true. So he's kind of a gunslinger. So he's going to be better than a lot of quarterbacks who play in preseason, even though he's not good as an NFL quarterback in general. And he likes to go downfield. He likes to take shots. They have got some very athletic receivers on this team. I'm definitely interested in Drew Lock.
Definitely. And then I'll go right back to you here with the running back situation. You talked about Darwin Thompson and explained what your thought process was here. And I think it's a pretty accurate explanation of what's going to happen today. So why don't you explain how you think the running backs are going to rotate here tonight?
Yeah, for some reason, the 7th back on this team isn't showing up. They signed a player this week, which is very odd for them to have done when they had 4 other players in Josh Johnson, Darwin Thompson, Travis Homer, DJ Dallas already available. You can rule out Penny and Walker for sure, but that's still 4 backs. They wouldn't need to sign a player that they're definitely not going to keep. Well, with that in mind, what does that kind of tell me? It means that they're probably going to bubble wrap Dallas and Homer, right? Like, they're not going to play them much, or if at all. I mean, maybe they'll run him out there with Gino, but at the same time, signing a player this late in the process just sort of screams to me that they're looking to play Darwin Thompson and Josh Johnson for almost this whole game.
Yep, and I tend to agree. And the weird thing is Josh Johnson has not played in week 1 or week 2. I don't know why. We have not heard any reason why he has not played in week 1 or week 2, but definitely indicates to me that we could see a massive dose of Darwin Thompson here, and I buy into that. Moving on to the receivers again. So even though the starters are expected to start, I don't know how much we're going to see out of DK Metcalf or Lockett. We do think that Eskridge might play a little bit, so he could get a little bit of snaps as well. The guys I really like here are Bo Melton and Aaron Fuller. They've both been really used thus far in the preseason. I think each had 8 or 9 targets last week each, and they were very productive with those targets as well. But one of the keys for me here is, yes, you do see that it's not as thin as other receiving positions. However, following up what Chris said about Drew Lock, I think they're going to throw the ball with Drew Lock because they want to see what Drew Lock can do throwing the ball. In the event where you're throwing the ball, the receivers obviously become more viable. So do you agree with that opinion on the receivers here?
Oh, I definitely do. I mean, Derek Young he's actually probably the best of this group down here. As far as where we expect him to land on the roster. I probably should switch those depth positions around, but I think he's kind of shown what he can do. He's pretty much earned it, whatever he's going to earn this summer. And I do think that Melton and Fuller are the guys that they probably want to see the most here in this game. So Young will definitely have a shot to produce this just the same as those other 2 guys, but I think Melton and Fuller get the longer run and ultimately are better plays.
Definitely. Looking at the tight end position, I know there is something with Tyler Mabry, which should indicate a lot of Colby Parkinson. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, Cade Brewer got cut, right? So they brought him back almost instantly, but he's certainly not someone that's at the top of their radar in terms of evaluation. Meanwhile, Colby Parkinson is the tight end 3. In previous season, missed a lot of time due to injury. They just don't have like a massive amount of tape of him playing any serious significant snaps other than what he's been able to get in the regular season on a sort of a part-time basis. So I do think that this is a pretty good chance if Mabry, who is doubtful for this game, I don't think we're going to see him tonight. I saw a tweet that he's not going to play. That's going to lead Parkinson to be someone who's going to play at least that 34% of snaps that he played last week and upside for a lot more. So you definitely got to like that. You do not envision someone like Noah Fant or Disley playing significantly past the middle of the second quarter, maybe possibly up to halftime.
Definitely. All right, moving over to the Dallas Cowboys. Looking at the quarterback situation, it looks kind of gross. I know we talked about beforehand, Will Grier is expected to play the most of these guys, but we're going to see 3 guys. So I don't really think you can really play any of these guys. I just don't see the upside for any of them. I don't see mobility for any of them. So it's really just a difficult situation where you can't really consider many of these options here. However, moving to the running back situation, this spot has been tough all preseason. All of these guys are getting a reasonable amount of touches, but no one's getting a mass volume share between the group. The question I have for you at running back is, do you think we're going to see Rico Dowdle get the amount that he got last week, or do you think they might sort of give more run here to Davis and Champlin?
Well, I don't really know the answer to that question. I wouldn't have thought that Rico Dowdle would have got as much run last week as he got. And there's no difference in this week to the first week to last week. And they sort of switched it up from the first week last week. So I couldn't tell you exactly what's going to happen. You sort of jumped over the quarterback. I just want to mention, I did see a tweet that McCarthy's thinking of playing Will Grier for most of the game. I don't know what that means in terms of exactly. I just wanted to throw that out there for full disclosure. He stinks. I'm not playing him anyway. I just wanted to make sure people knew that. The idea behind which back is the best here in Dallas, it basically comes down to, what's your gamble like tonight, right? Because if without information, you're just not going to know factually which one's getting the big run. For me, Malik Davis is the guy that I liked the best last week, but I can't discount that Dowdle's the best back, and he certainly hasn't locked himself into this role for the regular season the way that they're using these guys. So I would definitely just say it's close between Dowdle and Davis.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely comes off to me like they're giving Davis a chance to make the team and having him and Dowdle fight for that third spot.
It's a tough one, but I'm definitely going to get in the mix here. Just I'm not going to be going with my top tier of exposure with these guys just because of this playing time uncertainty.
Definitely. All right, moving on to the receiving position here. We see some guys that did play quite a bit last week. I know that the Dallas receivers is kind of a meme going around right now. What's your thoughts here? I know you liked Dennis Houston a little bit.
I mean, that's a stretch to say I like him. I mean, he's been getting touted in camp. He's been running with the first team at times. Kayvonte Turpin, as much as people want to try to make him out into something, he was playing in the USFL months ago and that didn't get drafted. He's certainly sitting out there as someone who can be a return man, but he's not someone at the wide receiver position that you would expect to consistently produce unless he had scheme touches like he had in the USFL. Not going to see that here. So Houston would definitely be the guy of all these guys that I think has the best chance. You'll see people out there talking about Tolbert. Sure, there's a chance they play him in this game and he produces, but I don't think he gets the run that everyone wants him to have in their mind. I think they run this game deeper down the depth chart.
I agree. I actually will say I do like some of the tight ends here. I don't think we're going to see as much of Sean McKeon as we did last week. And as you see between them, there was quite a few two tight end sets. We see about 150 percentage points there between the tight ends, which means there was quite a bit of two tight end options here for the Cowboys. Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot, they're both pass-catching options at tight end. Hendershot caught a boatload of balls at Indiana, and Ferguson caught quite a few balls at Wisconsin. Do you like these guys as much as I do going to the slate?
I think so. I think Ferguson stands a really good chance to be one of the top tight ends on this slate. I mean, he's a guy who missed time, so they're going to want him out there for more snaps, right? He's a young player. Their tight end 1 is locked in for the season. Their tight end 2 is basically locked in for the season. So they should have nothing better to do but to run Ferguson and Hendershot for as much as they can stand. And I think that's what they'll do.
Yep, I agree 100%. I think there definitely is a good option there. All right, moving over to the LA Chargers and New Orleans Saints here. Looking at the Chargers first, what is your thought on the quarterback situation? We probably will see about a half of Daniel and a half of Stick is what we've seen from them both games thus far.
I mean, this is the third season in a row that I've generally just discarded the Chargers quarterback situation just because they don't tend to do the thing that we like where they play one guy for most or all of the game. And that's usually where I tend to gravitate to my quarterback selections. And these guys just aren't good enough, respectively, to be someone that I want to take a chance on a half with. So bottom line is I will strictly pass on them. And if they beat me, they beat me.
For sure. Looking at the running back situation here, as you see, we just see a wide range of snaps. It's 22%, 20%, 24%, 20% from these running backs last week. I don't see any real openings here this week that would really change that. Do you see anyone that maybe would be a bit different here for you?
I mean, Spiller's not going to play, but he didn't play that much last week, right? 13% of snaps is what was earmarked for him. It's possible that maybe Kelly's done doing what he's going to do for the preseason, but to me, it doesn't sound like they've made a decision between Kelly and Roundtree, for week 1. Spiller helps out the situation quite a bit by not being available, probably. So if there was going to be anyone to like, you would be looking down at with Letty Brown. I don't know that I can really put my chips behind Letty Brown, considering I barely know who he is.
Yep. You would not have enjoyed playing Letty Brown in college football. He's basically the guy that would just get volume and produce nothing on the volume because he really has no burst, which isn't exactly the guy you're looking for here.
Yeah, if he's going to play 100% of snaps, maybe.
Oh, you give me anyone that plays 100%. If Chris Gimino is playing 100% snaps, I'm in on the preseason.
Definitely on that.
But all right, moving to the receivers here. As you guys see, we only have about 9 here. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both did not play in week 2. Would not expect them here. The one note I'll make is Joe Reed only played 21% last week. He was sick, though, leading up to the game and came back to practice like the day before. That could have reduced some of his snaps. I think he could play a bit here, but that's something you guys will have to make your decision on. The real winners here were Michael Bandy. We talked Michael Bandy up last week on the show, and Bandy had, I believe, 8 targets for 69 yards, or 8 targets. He caught all 8 for 69 yards and a touchdown. So Bandy was incredibly productive. So with a bit of a thin receiving core here from the Chargers, do you like any of these back-end guys at all?
Yeah, I mean, Palmer might not even play, right? He was in concussion protocol. I mean, they don't need to run him out there at this point. I mean, they might, but I don't see why they would if he's, someone who's just recovering from a head injury. And so that's just a couple of extra snaps to go down this list a little bit further. Makes up for any risk factor for something that Joe Reed might play a little bit more this week. Carter and Guyton are guys that are going to be on the team. They don't need to get past the quarter for sure. So it's once again pointing right at Michael Bandy, maybe Jason Moore and Bradford, but Bandy's the guy who sort of he has the profile of the quick twitch that's going to get open in the short area where these bad quarterbacks can find them for high percentage completions. Should see a bunch of targets again this game. Give me Michael Bandy one more time. Although I will say that I'm going to try to mentally gauge the ownership here and maybe not be just wildly over the field. There are a lot of good receiving options on this slate, and I do think he'll be popular.
Yep, I agree. I think Bandy will probably be in the top 5 in terms of ownership on the slate. So I definitely do agree with that. Moving to the tight end. So the biggest thing to note here, Say Surratt has been a little bit banged up. If he were playing, that would be the guy I would recommend here because he is only going to be a pass catching tight end. He's not going to be a blocking tight end. But what we're left here with is Hunter Kampmoyer and Eric Krummenek. And let me just say they're not the most pass catching friendly tight ends here. Do you like either of these guys knowing that there's really not many options here?
No, if you're playing Scrabble, I might like them. You get a couple of good Ks in there for extra points, but we're not doing that, so no thanks.
All right, moving on to the New Orleans Saints. The complete opposite of what we talked about with the quarterback situation in Los Angeles with the Chargers is the Saints. Ian Book played 100% of snaps last week. We like 100% of snaps. This week, it is a bit more murky whether he will get a full game, but I think what we can know here is that Book is probably the highest ranged quarterback on the slate. We know he will play at least 2 to 3 quarters and has a ceiling to play 100% of snaps. What is your thought here without knowing about Winston and Dalton's snap counts here?
My thoughts are that, look, maybe if they might want to get Jameis out there to play a couple of series, but if he's not going to be out there with Kamara and Thomas and Landry and all these other guys, what's the point? I don't see it really happening. I do expect that Book's going to have a big run in this game, but because of the fact that it's not declared and they have been very declarative with their statements about playing time in the last couple of weeks, that just leaves the crack in the door open enough that we definitely want to be vigilant coming up to lock to figure out whether or not Winston and Dalton are going to be participating in the game, because it does have a serious impact on who you like at quarterback, because Book does need that playing time to be the most viable.
Yeah, I will say that I like Book regardless if Winston and Dalton are going to play. Obviously, if they're both out, Book's the clear number 1. It's not close for me on this slate. Moving to the running back situation. So I'll let you talk a little bit about Kirk Merrick and possibly getting some running back touches here with the backfield.
Yeah, reports all over the place that he's moved from wide receiver to running back this week, and he's been playing it in practice all week long. Not, certainly you would call it a gadget player, but they have a gadget player who lines up in the backfield every single week named Alvin Kamara, right? They had Ty Montgomery here for a long time who played a similar kind of hybrid type of a role. This is a role that exists in this offense. So Kirk Merrick going back there and practicing is a significant development, and especially since they cut Divine Exigbo, right? Like that was a player who was like more of a grinder back, does not fit that mold whatsoever. So now you've got Merritt going back there, and suddenly the situation where you look at the depth chart, like, oh, it's only Tony Jones and Abram Smith. Not so fast. Dwayne Washington, Jabroni special teamer, he's not going to play. It's definitely going to be down to Smith, Jones, and possibly Kirk Merritt as your running backs here in New Orleans. That makes Abram Smith certainly very appealing as someone who could play a lot. But if Merritt is eligible at wide receiver and has a pretty decent floor as a running back, that makes me very interested in him.
Yeah, I will say that of that group, Abram Smith is my favorite. He's probably the most talented of that group, I would say. And he was able to catch 4 balls last week, but he's a big power back too that can really produce, especially near the red zone. So for me, Abram Smith is definitely pretty appealing. Moving into the receiving core here, obviously we don't expect a couple of these guys to play like Thomas and Landry. Chris Olave played a boatload last week. I don't think we will see that again here, but I'm not positive on that. But overall, they have about 8 receivers probably that are going to be getting some usage here. What is your thoughts on the receiving situation?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit thinner than it kind of looks, right? Because you have to do your best to guess how much Olave and Callaway would play. I think that does depend on who plays at quarterback. I think you'll see less of them if it's booked for the whole game. But, you look down the list here and suddenly it's kind of thin, like maybe 5 or 6 guys. Shahid didn't even play last week. I'm not sure if he was hurt, but he's certainly not someone who they're interested in keeping on the roster. Neither is Dixon. Merritt's only path to the roster is playing running back, so that's probably where we're going to see him tonight. I do think that Kaywan Baker could actually be in line for a lot of snaps tonight. I like him better than I liked him early in the day as I started to parse out that Traycon might not play here in this game, and that would be a big deal. I do think that Baker is someone who could be out there for quite a portion of this game. He's not particularly good, but if you're playing Ian Book at quarterback, I think he's probably your pairing.
Yep, totally agree. Speaking of a situation that is probably as thick as we think it is, the New Orleans tight end situation is not something I'm interested in tonight. We could see 6, 7 guys get snaps here.
I'm not on it, and that's just where I'm going to leave it. I haven't thought about them the entire preseason, to be honest.
Yeah, just too many guys. There's really been no clarity. Every single week is just 6, 7 guys running. We can always find positions that have a more thin options than that. All right, moving on to the last game of the night. We have the New England Patriots versus the Los Angeles Raiders at quarterback here. So we don't know exactly what to expect out of the Patriots in terms of how many snaps guys like Mac Jones and Brian Hoyer are going to start. I will say I think Zappe plays at least 2 to 3 quarters in this game. Do you see anything differently about that?
No, I mean, I don't really expect Mac Jones to play at all, but I mean, they might run him out there. They haven't ruled him out explicitly. So if he does get out there, they might get out there for a series or 2. And Hoyer played exactly 1 series last week. So I'm really not expecting him. It's for sure going to be Zappe's game for a big portion of it. And he's certainly going to be someone that's in play. I'll say my only reservation about Zappe is the fact that when they had joint practices this week, they focused almost exclusively on the passing game. And that does leave the door open for them to do some evaluation on my guy, Pierre Strong, who has stunk this entire preseason. So that would be the one thing is if they do want to focus more heavily on the run game in this contest, Zappe might not have that sort of gunslinger mentality that we've seen him had in previous games.
The good segue into the running back situation. Why don't you talk about your boy Pierre Strong and what to expect here from the running backs tonight?
It's been a little bit baffling. I mean, I do think that maybe that there's some issues with it being the preseason and the offensive line and just the offense in general not being as cohesive as you'd like it to be in New England. But physically, he's just like a beast compared to some of these other backs that we're considering playing in the preseason. Closest comparable to Elijah Mitchell. You may remember him from last year for being a guy who jumped out of nowhere to become relevant at the NFL. I think Pierre Strong has that kind of upside in the league, but he has not displayed it whatsoever in preseason games. Your only outs here are for sure the fact that Harris, Stevenson, and Montgomery need to not play at all. Montgomery did play last week, and that hurt his chances significantly. I do not think that will be the case in this game. I do think that we're going to see mostly Taylor, Strong, and Harris. And if the Patriots are interested in keeping him on the 53-man roster, it would make a lot of sense for them to play him heavily tonight.
Definitely agree. All right, moving on to the receivers. So this is a situation that I think is one of the most thin situations out there. I don't expect much of Parker or Myers. Maybe they'll play some. Probably can say the same things with Bourne, Aguilar, and Thornton, and Wilkerson. That only leaves 3 guys. It leaves Trey Nixon, Lil Jordan Humphrey, and Josh Hammond. Now, I do think we get some snaps out of some people here, but there's virtually no chance in which Trey Nixon, Lil Jordan Humphrey, and Josh Hamm do not get at least a significant amount of snaps between the three of them. Do you think we're looking at 80, 90% of snaps, or do you think guys like Parker and Myers might cut into that a little bit?
I think we'll probably see Kendrick Bourne, to be honest with you, right? He got disciplined last week. So, I mean, he might run out there early in the game because it's going to be several weeks until they're playing real football again. So that's one possibility. Aguilar's been a little banged up, so I don't expect we'll see him much, if at all. So the bottom line, the answer to this question is those three guys are going to play a lot. And I don't know if that's 100% or 60%, but either way, I like them. And as much as I think they might run the ball tonight, they're not going to run it more than 50% of the time maximum, which would be ridiculous anyway. So I do think that we're going to see plenty of targets for these three guys.
Yeah, these three guys are probably the best receivers on the slate. Like, can you play all three of them? No, you obviously don't want to necessarily play all three of them in one lineup. But someone's very likely to produce there, possibly two, possibly three guys. And realistically, you know who they're going to be. So great cash game plays, great GPP plays as well. As you guys see across the bottom line, make sure you guys go hit the like and subscribe button on the YouTube. If you guys are watching on the YouTube right now, we really appreciate that. Moving on to the tight end situation, we have Devin Asiasi or Devin Asiasi, depending how you want to refer to it as. He stinks. But I will say he did catch a few balls last week and was involved in the pass game a little bit. Which at least is somewhat appealing. But yeah, I'll let you talk about him a little bit more.
No, I mean, I don't want to talk about him. He's going to be out in there in the field, probably blocking a lot tonight. And just, there's always a chance that someone could accidentally score fantasy points when they're on the field for 73% of snaps like he was last week. So keep that in mind. I just have principles that I have to adhere to, Sean. I'm not playing them.
I totally understand that and respect that move. Moving on to the Raiders, we have a quarterback situation that I think is very interesting. They just dumped Nick Mullins this week. Very clear that Jarrett Stidham's going to be the backup quarterback. If we get a situation, now we do have to remember that this is preseason game number 4 for the Raiders. So if we think that they're going to get a vintage preseason week 4 type game here, we could see a lot of Chase Garbers. For those unfamiliar with Garbers, he is out of Cal. He has mobility and does run a bit as well. I think there's a possibility that Garbers plays a significant amount in this game. Do you think that is a possibility as well?
Yeah, I do. Like I said, they ditched Mullins, so they already started to tilt the snaps Garbers' way last week. Probably the reason that they traded Mullins is because they have some kind of faith that, well, certainly Stidham's the backup, right? And Garbers is going to be someone who's competing for the third spot here. Well, yeah, I mean, 4th preseason game. I mean, let's go. Let's get Garbers out there for 3 quarters or so, maybe more. And, let's see what we got in this guy. I am definitely thinking that he's going to be a really significant option in this slate. Be damned if we're wrong. No one's going to tell us who's playing, Sean, right? I mean, sometimes they barely do, but I mean,
the Raiders have been non-existent all preseason.
Yeah.
They haven't told us anything. So I definitely would not expect news, but I will say, upside wise, if he gets 3-4 quarters, which is in the realm of possibility, he's got great upside because he's very mobile and has the chance to rip some runs off. So definitely will have to take some flyers on him if you are playing tonight. Moving into the running back situation, I'll let you take the lead here. I know there's one guy in particular that you like above the rest here.
Sure. Everyone and their mom is going to want to play Zamir White because they're going to see that, well, Jacobs and Bolden and Abdullah are probably not going to play since they cut Kenyon Drake. They've set up their roster for the regular season depth chart wise. But my problem is Zamir White has pretty much made it very easy for them to cut Kenyon Drake. That he has been the guy they thought he was going to be for this team, and he's going to be part of their 4-man committee, similar to what McDaniels was used to in New England, where they had multiple backs playing multiple roles in the offense. To me, this is a very clear spot. Austin Walter is the guy they picked up at the beginning of camp here in order to be a camp body for this long stretch of games they have to run. Britton Brown, meanwhile, was actually a draft pick. I think he was a 7th-round draft pick and not a particularly good one. But we don't care how good he is if he's going to play most of the game, and that's what I think he's going to do. So Britton Brown, 40% last week. I think that number goes up. He's an interesting play here on this slate, someone that I will have in my portfolio.
Yep, tend to agree as well. Moving on to the receivers, we see the top 3 guys. We don't really expect them to play at all. Dylan Stoner was just returned to practice last week. He did not play, but we do think he's going to play this week. Justin Hall continues to just not play for them as well, so I don't expect much out of Hall. So with that all said, you have Keelan Cole, Tyron Johnson, Stoner, Zuber, and DJ Turner. Only 5 guys. I really like Tyron Johnson. He's been very productive the entirety of the preseason. Led them in targets last week. Led them in targets in the Hall of Fame game. He has sprinter speed to go with those targets. He's my favorite receiver here for the Raiders. Anyone else that you like in the receiving corps?
No, I mean, there's 6 guys here, so my concern is if they wanted to spread it out and put Justin Hall and Stoner in the mix, whom again, there's no clarity on whether or not he's going to play. I did see him running around at joint practices, so that's a sign that maybe he will. But because there's a couple of extra guys here compared to some other spots, it's not my favorite spot. But they are competing for that 5th wide receiver spot with Tyron Johnson. It's pretty much solidifying it, but I do think that he probably's got to do just a little bit more here in this game to make them feel warm and fuzzy about that decision. So he'll be out there. He's the guy I like the best. But I will say that I like this situation less than I've liked it in previous weeks.
For sure. Moving on to the last position of the night, we have the tight end position. I know in the past you've liked Jesper Horsted. Do you like him again tonight?
Yeah, you mean the preseason hero Jesper Horsted. Once scored 3 touchdowns in a game for the Bears out of nowhere. Yeah, I mean, I guess I do, right? Like, Cole Fotheringham and Nick Bowers. I mean, these are real people. These are not created players. They actually play in the NFL, but they're not people that we're expecting to be incredible pass catchers no matter how much they're on the field. So Horsted, as you can see, who played significantly fewer snaps last week than those guys, was still able to outproduce them. And that's something that could once again happen in this game, with the exception that I think that they could actually end up playing even a little bit more in this game, or with respect to Horsted. So I am interested in Horsted. He's going to be on my list, although I'm not going to go crazy. I don't think a 3 touchdown performance is on the way yet again for the GOAT, but he definitely does have a chance.
For sure. All right, wrapping it up here, just a quick recap of positions. For me at quarterback, it's definitely Ian Book's night. I think he plays close to a full game. What quarterbacks are you looking at here tonight, Chris?
Yeah, definitely Drew Lock. I mean, they're going to make him prove it. Like, they have no reason not to. He's essentially a backup quarterback. No, I mean, at best at this point, he's going to be their backup / half starter. So they might as well run him out into the ground tonight. So I do like him, and I do like Garbers.
Yeah, I think Garbers is a great upside play that really no one's going to be on. I don't think people are going to play him at all. So it's a great GPP dart throw. Moving into the running back, who are some of the running backs that you like heading into tonight?
I think Darwin Thompson will be out there quite a bit tonight. I'm going to play him. I mentioned Britton Brown. Raheem Blackshear is someone I'm for sure going to have some exposure to tonight for the Buffalo Bills. Probably sprinkle in some Pierre Strong. And I will also be having Abram Smith, your guy.
Yeah, Abram Smith's probably my favorite of the group. I also think Tony Jones is realistic there as well. I'm not sure how much Merritt's going to play. Like, he's not a guy that ever played that position in college. So I have questions about how many snaps he would get there. But it's good that he's trying something. Hey, you got to do anything you can to make a roster, right? So moving to the receivers, definitely my favorite spot is New England. All 3 of those guys at the back end, Humphrey, Hammond, and Nixon, are all great options. I think Humphrey and Nixon will be very highly owned. So if you want to go a little bit more off the beaten path, you can go in that situation and look at Hammond. What are some receivers that you like here, Chris?
You got to take a look at Michael Bandy. Bo Melton, for sure, is going to be on my list here this evening. The guys in Buffalo, Shakir and Hodgins, are definitely going to be players I'm playing. You mentioned Kirk Merritt. I'm going to go with my guy. There's too much intrigue with this situation for me to avoid that one. And, other than that, I do think that the guys, I guess the Los Angeles guys, Michael Bandy and Jason Moore are on the list as well.
Yeah, and then moving to the tight end, my favorite options tonight are Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot. I think those guys have a good path to playing time and both have shown their ability to catch the ball in college. What are some of the tight ends you're looking for tonight?
Hooking up Drew Lock with Colby Parkinson a little bit in my lineups this evening. And then I do think that you probably have to take a couple of lineups with Horsted. It's not an absolute stud play by any means, but I do think that there is a chance for him to do something. So when I play Chase Garbers, I may have some Horsted as well.
For sure. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. We will be back tomorrow for the last show of the NFL preseason before I bid adieu to the 2022 season, and you'll see me again next year. Make sure you guys smash the like and please subscribe as well on YouTube. We'll catch you guys tomorrow, I believe, at the same time, 4 p.m. Eastern. For Chris, I am Sean. Good luck to everyone tonight. We'll see you tomorrow.